Welcome back. A controversial decision just out by the Food and Drug Administration. It's about the morning after pill. Let's bring in a Prime News correspondent, Rochelle Carey, for more on this. Rochelle, what do you got?
All right, Mike, within a few weeks, underage girls, just 17 years old, will be able to get their hands on the morning after pill, or Plan B, that's what it's called sometimes, without having to talk to a doctor, without their parents ever knowing or being part of this major decision. The FDA made this announcement yesterday. Also, the judge who made this ruling now wants to look into girls of any age having access to this drug, Mike. So that's basically this thing in a nutshell.
Okay,
all right?
Rochelle, thanks for that. A few things, you know, as someone who is a parent concerned about our young people, one, I think we're looking at a slippery slope. What's next? 15, 16-year-olds? I think a decision like this, Rochelle, you kind of touched on it. I think parents should be in on it. We're talking about minors here, and most of all on a health front. I think we need a doctor advising here, but let's talk this one out, and let's get you in on the conversation. Call in at 1-877-TEL-HLN. Joining me to talk about it, Dr. Kara Garden-Swartz, a clinical psychologist. She also writes for MomLogic.com. Welcome. Also with us, Wendy Wright, President for Concerned Women for America. Doctor, let me start with you. And you know, how can this be good for a minor, again, a 17-year-old, to go through something like this without mom and dad, and on a health front without the advice of a doctor?
Well, I think what we have to consider is that not every 17-year-old has the same kind of parents. Ideally, of course, our goal is to prevent unwanted pregnancy in teens. And some parents have great communication with their teens and have open dialogue, have discussions early on, and the kids will feel comfortable talking to their parents.
Right.
And ideally, they would not be in this they're not in this category. They're the same kids that are going to talk to their parents. But what I think the advantage of Plan B without a prescription is for those kids who can't actually talk to their parents because they don't have good role models, there hasn't been good sex education. In extreme cases, you do have parents who become violent when they hear news about their kids becoming pregnant. And we really don't want to penalize kids who don't have good parenting, penalize them by them actually having a baby.
But on that parent front, I think the parent who may not know their child's having sex, yes, ideally you have the conversation sooner, but this might be that in an emergency situation in the bottom of the ninth, hey, you got to start at some time. I know this isn't ideal. Wendy, what about that? Does it bother you that mom and dad are cut out of this?
Oh, very much so, because it's encouraging young people to not have a good relationship with their parents. That, in fact, the FDA is now stepping in, intruding into that relationship and saying, you don't need to involve your parents. But let's also get some facts on the table. Two of the most prominent advocates for the morning after pill have admitted that it is not as effective as they originally claimed, and making it easy to get does not reduce pregnancies or abortions. I was on a show earlier today in which a pharmacist called in and said he sees women coming in every week, week after week, asking for the morning after pill. Well, this is a high-dose drug in which the low dose of the same drug requires a prescription for good reason. It can have serious effects.
Doctor, what about that? And that's another thing on a health front. If you need a prescription for regular birth control, don't you want a doctor's advice and counsel when you're going to take something that's more powerful?
Ideally, again, I think we're talking about children who don't have access to good medical care, don't feel comfortable turning to their parents or turning to the doctors. And so what is their alternative? Their alternative is either to take Plan B, to take the morning after pill, or their alternative is to have an abortion. We're talking about at the end. We're not talking about all the things that we can do in advance. There's so much we can do in advance to prevent teens from getting pregnant. But now they're 17 years old, and they now have the potential of being pregnant.
Right.
So what do you want in
well,
that scenario?
I'd like two things. That we're talking about minors, mom and dad in on that. I think in an emergency situation like this, ideally, that's when you need your mom and dad more than ever. And on a health front, I think a doctor, that's what, I mean, this is a powerful drug. This is, what, 5 to 10 times more powerful than a normal birth control pill that you need a prescription for. I just don't follow that logic here. Wendy, what is the research saying, Wendy, and I'll ask Kara as well, about the safety of this and taken excessively?
That's an excellent question. There have not been studies done on what happens to women, particularly young women whose bodies are still forming, if they take this high-dose drugs multiple times. Well, I think it's rather convenient for the pharmaceutical company and the advocates that they haven't done the study, so we don't know what kind of effect it will have. And really, a young woman who is in the kind of circumstance that the other guest is talking about, they're the ones that especially need to have some medical oversight, some medical counseling. They need to have an adult engaged in their life, and instead what we're doing is kind of throwing them to the wolves and saying, oh, we just expect them to go to a drugstore and take care of the problem, when in fact the drug is less effective than almost any other form of birth control, which means if she's relying on it, she's more likely to end up pregnant, and then because she wasn't expecting to be pregnant, more vulnerable to choosing abortion.
Yeah, you know, I think in this dire situation, you'd like someone to be with that underage person. Carol, real quick, and we'll take a break and we'll continue. What do you know about the safety, again, of someone taking it multiple times? Because that's a concern as well. We're talking about teens, and that's a teen mindset oftentimes. Have sex now and deal with it later with Plan B. Go ahead.
I actually don't find that teens will be taking it again over and over. I think actually the teens that will take it are teens that actually are aware of contraceptives and actually are trying to be proactive with their bodies. I think the teens that are being less healthy and are not as interested in taking it will be more likely actually to get pregnant. So I don't foresee teens taking over and over again.